Hey there, welcome back to the pod. The beginning of the week for Summer League, Colton texted us that the big man Donovan Clingan was Hashim Thabit 2.0 and ended the week saying Kling Kong is going bananas. It was a good week for Donovan Clingan. What'd you see, Colton?
Yeah, and the Hashim Thabit comment, while it was in jest and it was an early judgment call, that was mainly on the offensive side of the ball. In that first game, it looked pretty rough, but taken into account with the fact that you're going to be playing with summer league level guards, that's what you got to take away from it. The Blazers guards were not great at getting the ball down low, and the offense was not ran for Clingan, and that's how it is in summer league. I thought Clingan, outside of field goal percentage, did about everything you could ask for. His positioning on defense was what really stood out to me. Obviously, the rim protection, the rebounding was there. And even in that first game, he was kind of getting out muscled. Even though he had a lot of rebounds, he kind of mistimed some of his jumps. As the games went on, that wasn't happening. He was timing his jumps better. He was improving every game. He had one game where he had 5 assists. A lot of them were from like the top of the key, running the offense through him, and just his position and awareness on defense was crazy. And there's one sequence that I just want to talk about because I could talk about it all day. But there was a guy that drove into the paint against Klingon, and I wish we had the express written consent of the NBA so we could show it. But a guy drove in at Klingon. Klingon faked the block. He like faked like he was going to go up to block it. The guy passed, and then Klingon turned around, recovered, blocked it, and then on the other end, he hit a three. And, he was like 2 for 6, 2 for 7 from three. So nothing crazy shooter wise yet. But just that sequence, that's next level stuff. That kind of sequence can translate. So I really liked that. I really liked his passing. I really liked everything I saw. And I think his offense, after watching how he plays, will come through better with guys that'll get in the ball like Scoot. I think if there's one thing I would have him work on, it's like powering up and going up on balance with your post moves. Because there was some that he kind of stumbled through, but that can come with time. If he has everything else, that's all you can ask for at this point.
I saw a number of sequences like the one that you mentioned where because I thought you were going to talk about a different sequence when you said you had a great sequence in mind. He had another great one I can think of where he blocked the shot. He was able to communicate on defense. I think he got switched onto a smaller guy, was able to block the shot at the rim, and then took off running the other way, which is my favorite thing from a big, someone who really runs the floor. He just came flying down the floor, caught the ball in the lane, and slammed it home really hard. I mean, how long has it been since we've had a guy like that, who seriously runs the floor after playing amazing defense and then can finish? I mean, it's everything that we've been hoping for. And sure, it was against summer league guys. I'm not saying that he's like going to come in and be a completely dominant center from the get-go. That would be unrealistic to expect that from almost anybody. That's not even what we should be hoping for. What we should be hoping for is that these skills that he's showing he does have continue to develop. And the reason that I have so much faith in him, I've been putting a lot of faith in him since draft night, not just doubling down because we said we should take him, but I really feel like his work ethic and his mentality is right. It's very promising. He seems like he's willing to work really hard. He's coming in with the mindset of learning. He's trying to learn from everybody. He talks a lot about learning. He talks a lot about getting better, the things that he needs to improve on. He's very aware of. Yeah, I wasn't expecting him to be a great shooter, and he's not a great shooter. But honestly, his like finishing ability and his ability to get the ball in the rim and just having a nose for the ball is something that we've been looking for from a big for a long time. He goes up stronger than I think I've ever seen Nurkic go up already. So I hope that that continues. No flat-footed flip shots from the lane, please, Klingon. We've seen enough of that in Portland.
Did you guys see I can't remember which game it was, but uh a bunch of the young Blazers were there. They had Scoot, Shaden sitting next to each other. Right, Tumani
Avia was
Kamara,
there. Avia was there.
oh
Tamani.
Advia and Jabari. But there was a highlight reel that I watched of Klingon highlights, and in the second half they switched the sides of the court so you could see those guys on the bottom reacting to the different plays that were being made. That was the one last week that we were watching where he had the big poster dunk. That was that night because he had the big poster dunk and they all popped out of their seats and started celebrating, flexing and stuff. But just that, I mean, obviously it's a highlight reel, but that roll of plays that he had where he like caught the ball, ran the lane, dunked it. He had a drop pass to a cutter. He did that again from a guy cutting off the baseline. He found a guy with a bounce pass. He was on the other end. He was blocking shots. He had those guys hyped. That was my favorite moment of summer league from Klingon. He had a play in that game where he kind of just like threw the ball up. He caught the ball inside. He had low position. He threw the ball up at the rim and just sort of caught the ball off the rim. He knew he wasn't even trying to make it on that first one. He was kind of stat padding. Reminded me of Kevin Love from 15 years ago or so, and then he would get 30 points and 30 rebounds or whatever by. And Zach Randolph also had that skill where he could sort of just throw the ball up and knew exactly where it was going to be off the rim. Quick jumper. It seems like first to the ball in a lot of ways, really has a nose for the ball. And then also he just showed probably the thing that I was most hopeful for going into the summer league, that he just made winning plays. He just looks like a winner to me when he was out on the court compared to when he was not on the court. The team just looked so much better when he was on the court, and he was just affecting everything on both sides of the ball. Even if he wasn't the prettiest on the offensive end, he was still setting big screens, catching, making the right pass, spacing the floor somewhat, and then crashing the boards hard. It was just fun to watch him do that kind of damage and make those kinds of plays. And I don't think any of us are expecting him to do that right off the bat when he comes in the NBA consistently. But if he can do it occasionally and provide, like glimpses of that this season coming off the bench and changing a game, maybe changing the feel of a game, or starting to build a little bit of culture with those young guys, I think that's probably going to be his biggest skill set in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of, you don't know if he's going to get a lot of, that much time out there. I think it's a good thing that he's not coming in as the starter right away almost. I don't love every lottery pick having to come off the bench for this team.
That's just because they're so deep, Colton.
I don't love every lottery pick coming off the bench every year. I don't love it. But anyways,
That's just good
one
depth.
thing, it's his conditioning. His conditioning needed some work. He was getting gassed pretty quick. He's not used to running up those huge minute totals. And that's okay. You don't want him to get hurt either. But coming into the year, he's definitely going to be coming off the bench behind maybe multiple people. We don't know what's going to happen with the center log jam, which we should talk about.
Way to transition into our next topic of conversation, talking about
Definitely behind DeAndre Ayton. He's not going to start over.
We're going to be breaking down the depth chart over the next few weeks, and we might as well start right now with the center position. We're starting to dip our toes into that water. So obviously Ayton probably going to be the starter, by all accounts going to be the starter. Klingon, Robert Williams, Duop Reith, and then Jabari Walker is also on this particular depth chart with small ball, scenarios. I think he did play some center last year. So yeah, who do you guys see being like the first center off the bench? Riley, do you have a particular, Klingon probably, right?
Yeah, I think it will and should be Klingon. I've been very vocal on this show, and I don't think either of you disagree with me that we want to see the young guys play a tremendous amount of minutes this year. We're not trying to win. We don't need Jeremy Grant and DeAndre Ayton, trying to win games for us in the fourth quarter, getting injured and stuff. That's the last thing that this team should be trying to do. We should be trying to develop these young guys. So yeah, I want to see Klingon get a lot of minutes. I have no idea what's going to happen with Robert Williams. Yeah, obviously we didn't really get to see him last year. He's a very serviceable backup center, and I mean, if he's on the Blazers in that center position, then Klingon's going to have to compete with him for those minutes. I don't know if I really see Williams sticking around and like playing minutes. It seems like we ought to ship him. He definitely has value. He's never really been like indoctrinated into the, the Blazers team or their culture really. So it seems like it makes a lot of sense to try to move him for picks or something. Especially because we do have a little bit of a jam there at center. Although I did want to mention just one concern that I have, and it's a little bit of a preview for what we'll probably talk about next week, I guess. When we move to that 4 position, is that we're pretty small and thin at the 4 position, and so it's very possible that some of these guys may have to play some minutes down there too. Obviously, Jeremy right now is slated to be our 4, but I don't like Jeremy playing the 4. I never have, and so I'm still kind of making that pitch for I want to see some Ayton and Klingon minutes together. I think that we don't really have an obvious 4. That I mean, Jabari needs to play minutes for sure, but just that Jabari, DeAndre, and Klingon being kind of our only 5 4s. Yeah, I think Advi is better at the 3 too, as more of a backup for Jeremy. So, yeah, that would be my preference, and so I would really like to see us at least try the Twin Towers approach a little bit, see how it works. That's kind of my perspective on how those 2 positions should be played this year.
I think you're going to see it. And I think if Ayton could shoot the 3, I think it would work, honestly, weirdly. I'm not usually a big Twin Tower 7-footer guy unless there's one that's really skilled, like Kevin Durant or something like that. Or, Chet Holmgren maybe could play the 4. But I think if Ayton could just
Wemby.
step back, Wemby, obviously, yeah, he's the outlier. I think if Ayton could just take like 2 steps back and hit that 3 at 36%, he is mobile. He can guard the perimeter. Ayton, he is very mobile. He's athletic, and he's showcased it even last year when there wasn't anything going for him offensively and everyone was whatever. He was still able to switch out on the perimeter and doing okay out there. So I think it could work. And this way you could have kind of a 3-man rotation and have Robert Williams checking into the game as the 3rd big that gets minutes, because Jeremy Grant's going to start, right? But I think you need to get Robert Williams some minutes to showcase that he can stay on the floor before you trade him. So they're going to have to figure out a way to give him minutes, unless he's the throw-in in a trade that's like a larger trade, because people want to see that he can stay on the floor. So I think that the obvious odd guy out is Reith. And maybe Reith could play the 4. He's kind of shorter and he can stretch the floor.
I was gonna mention that neither one of you guys up till then had mentioned Reith, and I think that out of all the combos, him and Klingon might work the best right off the bat, just because he's such a pick and pop 3-point threat, and Ayton plays right at the rim. That would give him the space, maybe correct the spacing quite a bit with that. Obviously, Reith has to sort of prove himself in other ways to really be able to get a lot of minutes with that 3-man center rotation that you mentioned. But if he can play the 4 and keep up with the 4s on the defensive end and stretch the floor and play the pick and pop, then him and Klingon might work. It's really looking at this depth chart, because they didn't have Robert Williams last year. They were playing with 2 centers, 2 7-footers. I don't know how tall Reith is, but big dude who like to shoot the ball, don't really like to play at the rim, and Klingon is the opposite of that. So maybe he will be able to fit in with one or both of those guys, and be able to play, keep on the floor on the offensive end with just their ability to space and hit those shots. And then on the defensive end, I feel like it's very high upside with the amount of length and size that would be out there. Something that Blazers fans haven't seen since Rasheed was out there, probably.
Greg Oden.
Yeah, LaMarcus, I guess.
But he was out there.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to overhype it or anything like that, but yeah, I definitely think that you guys are on the right track in that the way that this works in the long term, especially if we are going to try to roll with Ayton for a while. I think the only way that it really works is if Ayton and maybe Reith, both of them even, take on a little bit more of that, just embrace who you are, take that step back and be a little bit more of a pick and pop guy, be a little bit more of a shooter, they don't like to play down low, and I'm here for it. That's fine. We just got a guy who plays down at the rim. And so if we want Ayton to work as a fit for this team for a few years now, I think the only way that that really works is if you're able to play them together, because otherwise
He
Klingon's
needs
not
to be able to
gonna
hit the three. It feels like it's really gonna hinge on whether or not he can start hitting the three with regularity,
At
which
least the corner. At least the corner three. You got to hit from somewhere.
Because Klingon's not going to be just DeAndre's backup for 3 or 4 years. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, if he does, it's a disappointment. You know, he's a top 10 pick. He should be starting in a couple of years. And DeAndre should be better than that, better than a backup to a seventh pick, you know, like that. So I hope that they can figure it out how to play together. And because that's a lot of skill and a lot of talent. I've never said DeAndre Ayton's not a talented player. The fit has been kind of a mess because he doesn't
Hey,
like to play down low.
what is this? I'm going to let you keep talking. What does this exact conversation remind you of? They have to be able to play together. It's not about the talent, it's about the fit. What other position group does that remind you
I
of?
was thinking there's a logjam at every position here. You look down, if they do play the two big guys, then you're gonna be Jeremy Grant or Odvio. One of those guys are gonna be out at the forward position. Then you got three guards that should be starting in the backcourt. So it's not like there aren't log jams elsewhere on the team, but you do the size is appealing for sure, having that kind of size out there if they could make it work on defense. But I mean, obviously something's got to give here with this team in general. There's just too many positional messes right now.
Well, we've talked, or I said I was going to let you talk right
No,
now.
go right ahead.
Well, so we want to focus on the center position, right? Because that's our depth chart video this week. But I just want to get you guys' take on something because when I watched Klingon, he was giving me vibes off a player. And it's not, finished product yet, but he's kind of giving me a Marc Gasol vibe. Maybe earlier in his career, Marc Gasol, before he was like really stretch, when he was on the Raptors, he could hit the three pretty reliably. But just the imposing presence, and Marc Gasol wasn't like the craziest, most athletic freak, but he had really elite positioning on defense, and he was also a good passer.
I think
Marc
what a
Gasol,
two-time defensive player of the year.
I mean,
I think he won it a couple times, and he was one of the defensive anchors on that Grizzlies team that was one of the best defensive teams for years
and he won a title. He won a title as the member of the Raptors.
with the Raptors.
As the defensive anchor. Like that kind of a center could win in today's game if Klingon continues to tweak the shot. If he can get up to like 35%, I know that's kind of tall ask with how bad of a shooter he's been, but he's at least taking them in summer league. So a guy like Klingon can win in the NBA if he might not be peak Marc Gasol, right? But that's the kind of vibes he was giving off in summer league and in his summer league, but he was doing some of that in college as well. So what do you think of that, Riley? Did you see that at all?
Yeah, I definitely see that potential. And I mean, we can talk about how like the shot's not really there and it's just summer league and all that, but he's also so new. That's the other side of that coin is that sure he's doing this against players that aren't as impressive and he hasn't shown a big enough sample size, but that's not on him. That's not his fault. He's 20 years old. He's brand new into the NBA. And he's just getting ready to make his mark. So what I saw was the seed of a lot of those skills. I mean, sure, 2 for 7 isn't 35%, but 3 for 6 is better than that. If it just flip one of those, you have a totally different situation. So yeah, I mean, I think he's closer than a lot of guys are at that position. And I definitely see him as someone who could anchor a team. The defensive communication, the nose for the ball, those things are so hard to teach at this stage. He's coming in with a lot of advantages and the right mindset. So yeah, I do see him as the anchor on a good team. Whether it's the Blazers, I sure hope so, because I'm tired of drafting guys that don't end up being our guy for the long term.
I know it's oversaid, but today's NBA, it's going to be the 3-point shot that keeps him that decides whether he's like a good player or borderline all-star. And I actually think I don't know, just his work ethic and his like his desire to get better. The shot doesn't look necessarily broken. It actually looks decent to me. I think that he will figure it out in his career. I don't think it'll be, maybe it won't be something that comes super early, but I like that he's willing to take them. You know, he seems not, he's not hesitating like a lot of the guys that we've dealt with in the past that were supposed to be big man shooters. Uh, he takes them, pulls them in stride. It looks pretty fluid. I really liked what I saw from him shooting the ball. It'd be nice if he made more, obviously. But if he could, you know, man, he's a borderline all-star player with his defensive skills, his rebounding skills, his size, everything else. If he continues to look like that on that side of the ball.
I mean,
Yeah,
at this stage, he's only taken a few in game, in rhythm with defense threes from NBA range. You know, I mean, he's still getting used to where the line is at this point. Like, we got to give him a little bit of time because I think that shot could definitely come around. It looks pretty good to me. He's got to keep working on it for sure. But yeah, I see the possibility for someone who could shoot 35%.
it's funny. It's never too early in my mind for a redraft, just because I'm that guy. If you go and look at the people, the teams that drafted ahead of the Blazers, right? Risha Shea looked solid. He's the least hyped, least buzz number one pick I can remember. You didn't see him on Summer League, you didn't see it, but you go through and look at the stats, pretty good. Sar, we could talk about Sar really quick because
He
that
wouldn't
was
be on our center
historically
depth chart right now, I'll tell you that.
that was historically bad. Yeah. Wizards might be in contention for Cooper Flag if Sar is and Kuzma and everybody out there in Poole are the commanders out there and the tank commanders. So he was horrendous. And then Reed Shepherd looked really good. He looked very good. But then you go on down the line, Castle, he had an injury. He looked pretty good.
He did look good when he wasn't hurt
Klingon
though.
was right, but Klingon was there too. Like pretty comparable. Castle had a pretty good game in that one game. They played against each other. But then, you know, Salon, he's looked kind of he's a project, right? And the Hornets took that wing and you never know. And then Detroit, Holland, we called it as a reach at the time. Still shooting numbers are not looking good, and you know, is Detroit ever going to turn around? I don't know. I think Klingon could move up already on the redraft list, and it's early.
You know who's looking like they should have moved up to number one though? Bub Carrington, the next
No.
Michael Jordan, the player the Blazers traded, the 12th pick.
Let's look at the
Or Denny
Celtics
Avdia.
stats for Bub.
He looked pretty good. I watched a game of his, and I don't know what you can tell us the stats, but I mean he was a game changer for sure. He almost won them a game single-handedly just
He
with his
definitely looked
energy.
better than Sar. Like looking
I
at
was
their
gonna say,
side by side stats.
if the Wizards hit on one of those two picks, though, it's a win. So if it is
Is it
Bub that
missing out on Sar? I don't know. I feel like that's or
Yeah, they could have taken
Klingon,
a lot of guys.
Klingon or Edie
they could have, but they're gonna be
or Castle. I
shooting
think
for.
Castle could end up being the best player in the draft. I've said that several times, but he looks pretty dang good.
Speaking of low shooting percentages, Bub Carrington, 15.8 points, 7.4 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal on 32% from the field. So
I'd take
very
that in summer league. I would take that all day from my
32%.
14th pick.
Everyone's shooting like 6 for 25 in summer league.
Jeez, I don't know.
Those are so he's got a rounded game there with rebounds, steals, assists.
Didn't Klingon shoot like 30% too? Everyone
he
just
shot
shoots like crap in
37,
summer league.
35%, I think. Yeah.
It's sloppy out there, man. It is sloppy out there.
Yeah, you
Summer
just
league
got
ball is
as
hard to
soon as you
watch.
catch the ball, you just gotta chuck it up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's gonna be a turnover.
Jeez. And so all summer league teams were announced. I'm gonna pull those up.
Oh,
I
you
feel
know
like
that dude from Houston's gonna be Cam Whitmore. That dude looked Very good.
Last year, he had that crazy fall. All right. Most valuable player, Jalen Wilson on the Brooklyn Nets. Didn't see much about him.
Isn't the championship like right now?
Yeah, I believe so. Gigi Jackson, Jordan Miller, Scottie Pippen Jr., Reed Shepherd, and Kel'el Ware. We talked about Ware leading up to the draft.
Classic
and
Miami.
if we would have kept that 14th pick and we took a wing with the first pick, I really liked Ware. He was kind of my guy at 14, and he looked really, really good out there. Yeah, classic Miami. Oh, Donovan, our boy, is on the second
Nice.
all summer league second team with Bub. Jaime Haka, JJJ from Miami. There you go. Jarris Walker and Jalen Wilson. Whoa, wait a minute. Jalen Wilson was the most valuable summer league player, but he's on the second team.
That's
Wow.
summer league for you, baby.
They're
By the way,
making stuff up
there's
as they go.
2:44 left in the championship game, and Memphis is up 109-107 right now.
Scottie
Ooh,
Pippen
that's
Jr. looking pretty good with
28.
28 points on 9 of 22. He looks like he might be pretty solid.
Yeah. He might get regular season minutes for them. They just traded Zaire Williams, which he's been a bust for them because they're opening up room for him. And Gigi Jackson too. Grizzlies, if you talk about a team that's going to do better than last year, I think the Grizzlies are number one. Like
Zach Edey and all that team that was the number 2 seed 2 seasons ago. Desmond Bain, John Morant. They're
Jackson.
Jackson Jr. I know they got others too. They got a deep bench. Like I don't know if they still have Luke Kennard, but they have depth too.
They don't have Luke Kennard, but the only thing that'll stop them is this. If Ja comes in and starts brandishing again, that might be the only thing that stops him from improving because
he's been pretty quiet the last year, so I would say the last 15 months we haven't heard a peep out of him.
Quiet until the worst possible time, and then he just decides to brandish another weapon.
I think he just stopped going on live on Instagram. That was his problem. Like, bro, if you like guns,
even when he doesn't do that, he's fighting with a teenager on his property and assaulting him. I don't know. If he makes good decisions, they will be better, much improved for sure. And we'll see. I'm excited to see the Edey versus Klingon thing. We'll see how Edey does in
that could end up being in the rivalry.
As long as Klingon can hold his own and it wasn't just the whiff and Edey's the game breaker. Edey's the MVP of the league and is better than Wemby, and we passed on.
He's just posting up Wemby and dominating him in the NBA Finals for years.
Good.
Congratulations to Klingon making the second team. That's awesome. I wonder if he'd played in that last game, maybe he could have made a push for first team. But because I mean he's had some of the best showings, individual performance showings, just on the defensive end especially. I mean, more blocks per game than ever before in summer league. Really impressive numbers. So, congratulations to him for a good first showing representing the Blazers well. It's good to see.
This might not be the time to have this conversation, but the thought just crossed my mind because we're talking about him coming off the bench. And I was thinking, is he the first off the bench? Oh no, who would the first off the bench be? And then I was thinking we need a starting lineup to start thinking about who's coming off the bench. Who do you guys think who's going to be the starting 5?
Oh, you're going to ask this at the end, the tail end, not give a whole thing of discussion?
I guess we'll give our quick opinions before
then we can revise next week maybe.
Yeah. I mean, so
this is who I think Simons and Grant will start because I think Simons and Grant are be in there. Ayton will be in there. I think probably Shaden fits with Simons and Denny.
It's gonna be Denny and Grant and Ayton and Anthony.
Who's number 5?
Scoot. And
Shaden. You think Scoot's starting with they're gonna do the 3-guard lineup?
No. Scoot's gonna be starting and Shaden's gonna come off the bench. and Denny and Grant and
I think that will be where we'll start the season. I hate Grant at the 4. I think that's a complete waste of his skill set. I don't like it. He doesn't
I
want to
hate
play
him on
that
the
position.
Blazers. Trade him.
I know. We really ought to trade Grant and Anthony, and it would alleviate a lot of these problems. Because I
at
want to,
least one of them.
I mean, it's really got to be both of them at some point. Because
Yeah, but
we got to see Scoot and Shaden develop together, and that's not going to happen as long as Anthony's on the team.
So then with that lineup, you'd be looking at like Klingon and Sharp as the first off the bench, right? If you're
that's
talking,
exciting.
you almost got, and if it's Shaden that's starting, instead you got Scoot and Klingon coming off the bench with Tamani Kamara, maybe Ryan Rupert,
Jabari.
Jabari Walker, yeah. So there is a lot of depth there, even though there's a lot of log jams at the positions. There's a lot of depth. It's if they can figure out whose role is what, and they obviously need to clear it out somewhat too. But they're starting in a pretty good place with a lot of young depth.
You want to hear the issue? Can you guess what the issue is?
I already know. Did you see him on Rashid's
Johnson.
podcast?
No, I didn't see it. What did
No.
he say?
It was an interesting it was like a 30 I watched it was like a 32-minute video where they just interviewed him about what it was
Detroit.
like coaching the Blazers and stuff. It was interesting.
He didn't badmouth because he's keeping his future prospects up.
He was basically just saying that, they're not built to win, and he has to like adjust what his idea of winning is because he's used to having the keys and being able to actually like go out there on the court and win or whatever. And he was talking about the differences between coaching and being a player and trying to teach these young guys how to play the position that he played, and what to look for and out on the court and stuff. It was an interesting conversation, but yeah, you could tell he was uncomfortable with winning, but he'd done some work over the last few years trying to sort of adjust his framing of how he thought about winning and losing because he said like we lose by 20 and I gotta like pick out wins in the game or whatever. Like, did my young guys get better? Were they in the positions they needed to be? And Rashid was like, man, you really are a coach now, like talking like that, using those excuses.
Rough stuff. But there's gonna be light at the end of the tunnel. I really do think this will be the season. One more year of turmoil and draft focus. And then you got the upswing. You got the upside. You're going to be trading more players for assets, future, hopefully. And then hopefully your young core grows and you got those extra picks in the later years that you can use in trades or keep to restock. So let's just hang in there one more year. That's my preference.
One of the things I need to see this year is I need to figure out whose team this is. I feel really a lot of conflict on that, and it doesn't even necessarily need to be one dude's team. It can be like a couple of guys. You can have a co-captain situation potentially, but I don't buy the idea that the co-captains are going to be Scoot and Anthony. They're too similar in their position. They're too different in their timeline and stuff. I just don't see that happening. And so which one of those guys is it going to be going forward? Is Scoot going to be strong enough, alpha enough to be the guy who takes over the team? Is it going to take Klingon to walk in and be the guy who kind of takes over the team and starts to develop a winning culture? Are we going to see something develop between like Klingon and Anthony that takes us out of nowhere? Like, oh crap, it's their team now. I just don't know, but I want to see a lot of experimentation and a lot of trying this year to find out what the future of this team looks like. And we got to see Scoot.
It's Jody Allen's team, Riley.
It's my team. My team. I got to see if Scoot's going to be this serious guy going forward because I feel like the team's being still built with the idea that he's our new Dame, and I don't know that that's true, but we'll see.
Riley is uncertain about Scoot.
I don't know if anybody's going to be the Dame. It's going to be different in terms of one guy's not going to be the shoulder drop 70.
I'd
but
rather have it be
75
three
one.
guys or so that you build around, three cornerstones rather than one. It's just too much to ask from one guy, especially a 6-footer who takes 40-foot shots. How many of those can you really make against great defense?
If Scoot is the head of the snake and can dime and play defense and score 25, Chris, I'm not saying he's Chris Paul, but Chris Paul doesn't have to score 40 to control the game. Can Scoot be like the dimer point guard that controls
Then
the
you
game?
got Klingon being the enforcer down low, and you got Shaden being the terror on the wing. That's like
Yeah.
that's the future we all hope for. And then Denny and
And then you got Cooper Flag in there coming in for the alley oop.
yeah,
Cooper Flag to the Blazers. It's gonna happen.
Denny just banging up wide open corner threes every time they get swung his way.
I don't
Love-
hear either one of you saying anything about Jeremy Grant or Anthony Simon. So what
Or
that says to
DeAndre
me
Ayton.
is ship them.
Or DeAndre Ayton. All
Get 'em
three of those
out.
guys can dip,
Send
kick
them.
rocks. We know what we want the franchise to look like. Why don't they just put us in charge? I still don't understand why we're not GM.
We'll do it for a lot cheaper. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, not a lot. Calm down.
I'm gonna go play a fantasy dynasty on 2K just so I can do what I want to do. My team, damn it. Thanks for watching. See you next Monday. Bye-bye.
Bye.